My name is Chase Gick, and this is my story. See, back before my divorce, I had everything I could ever want. I had the dream house, I had the beautiful wife, had an amazing family, had all the land that I ever wanted. And as a family, we did everything together. All of it. Family vacations, all the birthdays. Just really, really enjoyed coming home. And see, all that was so amazing, but I'll never forget the day all that changed. See, we were at one of those birthday parties for my middle son. He was just turning 2, and we had just gotten done opening presents, and everyone was there, the whole family from both sides, and a completely full house. And as we sat there all around the dinner table, singing my son happy birthday, I remember my phone went off. I didn't think nothing of it. I'm there in the moment of my son. I'm present. So we just kept singing and having a good time, and my phone went off again. But what killed me was as I ignored that phone going off multiple times, I really didn't think anything of it, but I got up after singing happy birthday to go cut the cake and serve the pieces to everyone that was there. And as I did that, I went ahead and took the moment to pull my phone out and see what was happening. And I was blown away. My life was changed forever in that moment. It was a message from someone I'd never met before. And all she said was tell your wife to stop sleeping with my man. And, my world fell apart. As I sat there and stared at it, I even looked up across the room, and there my wife was holding my other children, smiling, laughing, loving life, having a great time like any other day. And I'm looking at this message thinking, there's no way. This isn't right. This person doesn't have the right number. So I told him just that. So there's no way this is the case. And then the pictures started coming in. It was screenshots of messages, screenshots of pictures that were sent. And it really, really was just the moment I couldn't deny it anymore. So as I'm staring at all these, looking across the table and across the kitchen at the rest of the family having that great time, I know right then and there that all this is a lie. My, insides just were turning. I couldn't think straight. I could feel myself just getting less and less present, I almost want to say. It's almost even hard to explain. You feel as if you're just staying there as a shell, looking at yourself, looking at the situation. It's all incredibly surreal. But as I made my way back over to the table to hand out the random pieces of cake to family members, I remember handing the one to my wife, and I even, smiled at her as she said, I love you. And I said, I love you back. And, we went on our night. Told everyone, have a great day. Thank you. Thank you for stopping. Our son appreciates it more than you could ever imagined, and, sent everybody out, and off we went. We actually ended up even playing with the kids for a little bit and cleaning up the house and picking up all the presents and the trash. And before long, it was time to send them to bed. And honestly, in between there, I'd actually kind of forgotten. I'd kind of slipped out of reality and back into this false scenario because things started to feel common. But as the night fell and as we were starting to walk our kids upstairs to bed, the reality was setting in that this conversation was about to happen, and I don't know if I can make it through it. So we tucked our kids in as always and wished them a good night, and I sat there on my son's bed, hugging him longer than I ever have, knowing that once I got up and shut that door behind me, that nothing was ever going to be the same moving forward. I didn't know what that meant, but I just knew nothing would be the same. So as I got up, shut the lights off, and closed that door behind me, I just looked at my wife and said, we've got to talk. Let's go downstairs. And as we made our way downstairs, you could hear the trembling in her breath. She knew something was wrong, obviously. And I just couldn't help but imagine, do you know what I know now? And I don't typically play the detective game. I don't like to go around and try to catch people in the middle of things. It's just more of a just, hey, listen, this is what's happening. So what do you have to say? So as that's the case, I just turned my phone on, opened up those messages and slid the phone across and said, what is this? What's going on here? And as she read the first message, she did the same thing I did. She said, this isn't true. It's not right. It's a lie. I just could barely even look up and said, just keep scrolling down. And as more messages kept coming through, as she saw them the same way that I did, you couldn't deny it anymore. And as we sat there with our heads hung low, tons of emotions everywhere, all over the board, whether it be, getting upset with each other in the form of crying, in the form of arguments, back to crying, back to arguments, and just sitting in everything that was that moment, knowing that nothing would be the same, and both of us were at that realization. As hard as it was, we still found our way to going to bed. We had to still get through the night. We didn't know what was going to happen moving forward, and there was tons of steps taken along the way as far as the next day and the day after. As far as with the kids, it all was a very everything's okay. You guys have no idea, and there's no reason for them to know yet, because we had no idea what was actually happening. And I can distinctly remember in that following week, after reading that message for the first time, just being very separated, being very disconnected from myself. I found myself going through my typical day, and just people kept asking me, what's wrong? You look out of it. And I just nodded my head or said, oh, it's nothing. It's no big deal. Don't worry about that. And I couldn't believe that was the case. It felt like this time was just being lost, and I didn't even know what was going on. So as I was doing that, I knew that things couldn't stay the same, but I didn't know what to do. We did what most people do, to be honest, in those situations. We kind of, stopped talking. We stopped, I started sleeping on the couch a little bit here and there, or she did. And, we did the typical trial separation between us, which was just horrendous, to be honest, because neither of us knew what to do or how to handle it or even what we were thinking or feeling. We just couldn't believe the reality we were in. And as we started going through that more and more, we found our way to therapy. And the only reason we found our way to therapy was because one night we were sitting on the couch watching TV, and neither of us were even watching it. We were both on our phones because we were so separated all the time. We weren't even hardly talking anymore. We were the typical couple. We sat on social media on our own devices, spread across the couch that we weren't even sitting next to each other on. And as that happened, I remember that night she looked up at me and looked across and said, "Are you cheating on me?" I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that she would ask me that. After everything that had gone on and the weeks of just stumbling through this, when all I was doing was fighting the temptation to just leave and pack up and go, and you asked me that? So yeah, we ended up in therapy right after that moment. That was the day that I said, this can't happen anymore. Something has to change. This is beyond my knowledge, and this is beyond our ability to handle this in whatever situation, because I knew I couldn't go forward anymore from there. So quick side note is, if you find yourself in any sort of therapy, oh my goodness, make sure you do your due diligence and check on references or maybe, any sort of reviews, anything possible, because I will say that, it's very, very hard to get to find a therapist right now, or at least at this time it is. And here in Indiana especially, there is a high need for them, and it took a minute to find one. So once we did, we thought we made a good choice. I will say now, looking back, without getting to any of the details, that was rough. That was something that could have been a lot better situation. That just wasn't. It just wasn't. So hopefully, as a quick side note, you take the time to look into who it is that you're seeking therapy from. and what result it is you're looking for. But that aside, all as it became more apparent was that I couldn't handle this anymore. This was just something that was too against who I believed myself to be and who I'd presented myself to the world in this life. And it just went against all that. So it was just too big of an obstacle for me to overcome. And at the end of the day, that's what started the official divorce process. And as we went through that, again, same emotions that we were having before that had just stalled out for a little bit was still just the immense sadness and the immense frustration and anger and back to sadness and just the complete loss of what is happening. Something that seemed like I had a total grasp on, which was my life. It seemed I didn't at all. And before you knew it, the paperwork was done. The decision was made. We were officially divorced. Our house was sold. And the only place I had left to go was to my mom's house. So here I was, a man in my 30s, knocking on my mom's door, asking for a place to stay because I had nowhere to go. Which, just a short time before that, had everything. And in a blink of an eye, was back living with my mother. Which thankfully so. Thankfully she had the extra bedroom for me. Because I don't know what I would have done in that moment. So as I was going through that, I found myself so many nights in a row sitting in her spare bedroom with nothing that was mine other than the few clothes hanging in the closet, of just spiraling down over and over and over and consistently just being mad, being angry and being upset and not understanding what happened. And as I sat there and just, I literally did nothing else. I sat in the corner of this room and just dwelled on how horrible things were at that moment and why it made no possible sense to me why you would ever do something like that. Why would you throw all that away? She had ruined my life. That's all I could come up with. Why did she do that to me? And that went on for weeks. That went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And there were some nights that my kids were able to come over and stay with me. But, again, there was only one spare bedroom. There wasn't a bunch of extra space for everybody. With 3 children, it's hard for all of us to fit in that one room. So they deserved more than that. So just like many of the other days in the past, as I got up for work and headed out and did my thing throughout the day and like a zombie just slothed my way through the day with many comments that I'm sure happened to me, but I just zoned them out of just, gosh, what's happening to him? What's going on? And see, at this moment too, is a lot of people still didn't even know this happened because my personal life was just that. It was my personal life. And I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt like a failure. I not only felt like a failure, but I didn't feel like a man anymore. So there was that. And, also as a father, it was just all lost. So again, night after night, I'd find myself in that bedroom, sitting in that chair, wondering the same thing over and over. Why did she do this to me? Why did this happen? And it just took everything out of me until finally, there really just, in my eyes, there was no reason to exist anymore. It didn't matter. I wasn't helping. I wasn't doing anything but other than bringing others down. And I just didn't want to be that representation for anybody in the future. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And I felt like all the time I had put in already was just wasted. It was gone. So on that night, I found myself sitting and I made the decision that this is just not for me anymore. This life wasn't for me anymore. My chance was over and it was taken from me. So what's the point? So I found myself getting my gun out of the closet, took one last breath, shut my eyes, and pulled the trigger. Once that trigger was pulled, there was a split second of just, what is happening? It wasn't even a what have I done, it was what is happening. And after that thought, nothing. Nothing happened. The gun had misfired. And man, as I sit here to this day, I have no idea how that happened in that moment, but I am so thankful it did. With that gun misfiring, it just lit me up inside in a way that I've never been before. It was some of the most clear moments I've ever had, and it was some of the most emotional moments I've had in my life. I sat there and cried and cried and cried for hours, thinking, how have I fallen this far? How did I come to this? And I knew that that couldn't be the case. Like, this can't be the situation. And if I'm struggling with this, I got to figure it out. Like, so everything I'm doing is wrong. So in that moment, I decided that that's it. I can't do this. I had to fix it. So right out of the gate, I knew that my mind had failed me because all I was doing was sitting with myself and my mind in the corner of that room, and it was just looping on the same thoughts. So I just sat around and figured out, okay, what is happening here and what are my potential solutions? So I started trying them all. My goal was, there's literally 1,000 doors open right now around me, and my goal was to shut 999 of them as fast as I possibly could, so that way I knew which one was the right one. And I did that over and over and over, starting with my mind. Once my mindset was right and I started to get that there was a real potential out there and that it was up to me and no one else, and that everything really was up to me, even the situations that I was in currently and the moments that, led me to that night, that was still up to me. Every one of the decisions that led up to that night, everything was up to me. I had time to decide, and I made my decisions. So from then on moving forward, my mindset was ironclad. I wouldn't allow myself to be weak anymore. Even in the moment of any sort of thought that entered my mind, no more. Shut it down, get up, do something. That was going to be how I lived the rest of my life in every area. So from then on, I started seeking out anybody and everybody I could with all the information that I could ever want. See, if they had my mindset, I followed them, I learned from them, I paid for their courses or to get into their presence and learned directly from them. From there, I went straight into my physical appearance. How did I need to work out? How did I need to do things? How did I need to feed my body for optimal life? Same thing. Got directly involved with people. Started working on their teams to make sure I understand who they were and what their culture was. After that, started becoming financial side. Okay, now that I've got these other things ready, let me get my finances right. How do I get through this life now as an individual for me and my kids? With that came, I got to break it all the way down. I'm no longer 2 incomes. I am now 1. How do I make this go as absolutely far as I can? Time to expand. So I got hooked up with, once again, some of the top people in the financial space to be able to create more income for myself. With that, I found myself getting in massive opportunities in new fields that I never thought was even a possibility. And since then, I've just been able to walk into almost any door in any company and set myself apart and find a role immediately. I've done this so many times that it actually started to become a little bit of a sport to me. I was coming in and out of jobs that drove me in one sense, and I would quickly climb their ladder, and I wanted a new hurdle. I needed something more, so I would level up, start to do more. Kept that mentality right and moved through the next one. And from there, I was just learning skill after skill after skill to keep leveling up. And once those kind of things start falling in order, it's only a matter of time of, people start noticing you. The people around you start wondering what has changed. What's gone on? They haven't seen you in a little bit, but boy, they've never seen this you ever. And as you do that, you get not only attention from just the people around you, but the people you want around you. And as you get that, it's the attention from, a mate. If you can find that dream woman, because now that you know who you are, you know who you look for and who compliments you. This is something that can be absolutely massive, and it's something that honestly happened for me, and it was almost without any effort at all. It was as I had become this new person, I was applying these same things into multiple areas all at once, and I did the same thing with relationships. And without knowing it, the right person just appeared. And I don't think I would have ever noticed that if it wasn't for the fact that I knew what I wanted. So that way, once it did appear, it stood out. She stood out to me more than anybody has ever stood out in my life. It was time to move forward. And finally, I felt I had truly found the perfect solution. It was these 5 key areas that allowed me to become who I am today and leave that old person behind and realize that that person was weak. They were no more. Now armed with these 5 pillars of masculinity, it brought me to my new method, the divorced to dominance. Now with my life, as amazing as it is, here's what it's like. It's daily I wake up, do what I want to do on my schedule, keep control of my life with my beautiful woman, have the day of my dreams every day. Go out, relax, whether that be hiking, whether it be working out, whether it be meditation, whether it's just take some time with my kids because they have a day off during the breaks. It's what I want to do on my terms, day in and day out. So if you're a man that's going through what I've been through, you just need to understand one thing. It does get better. It will get better, but it's not an accident. It's not something that'll just happen. It's not just getting back into the groove. It's not just putting your head down and grinding. It's none of that. It's with deliberate effort on your part, but it's going to take you and a lot of action.